Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and this is the final show of this week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh, and we have a lot to catch up from what we have been through. And I am honored, and it is my joy to welcome Dr. Parikh to this weekly conversation. Namaste, Doctor.
Namaskar.
This year taught us a lot of lessons. If we pick the top three from your point of view, what comes to your mind? Uh,
Well, I think first one is a pandemic of COVID-19. That's number one. Number two, it's election, USA election November. And number three, the whole world, economy of the world affected by the pandemic.
okay, so these were the major events that shaped our world this year. But if we go deep in terms of the lesson which came our way from COVID, what would you say this taught about life?
Well, it taught about life that life one cannot take life for granted. Always God has its way to teach us that life is not as simple. Do not forget me, and so will make sure that you will get a challenges, and you have to deal with that challenges. That time when we deal with the challenges, and when the challenges are very severe and very kind of horrifying, like pandemic, we always then start more believing in the God and superpower. And I think that's the lesson one should learn. And the other lesson to be learned that everyone has to act responsible way, follow the guideline of the CDC or scientist. And if you do that, it's easy to come through this kind of pandemic. And now we can see that within less than a year, we got even vaccine, which will end this pandemic.
So I hope what you are saying is the way things unfold for us. But when you were saying that people start believing more in the superpower, I was just thinking that President Trump was also blaming China for this. And then we also have many countries looking at China with very, very intense suspicion. So the conclusion is, was it man-made or was it the doing of superpower where as a physician, as a scientific temperament tells you to look at it when we respond to this challenge?
Of course, it is a man-made. It is. I'm the scientist, so I know that it's man-made. But even man-made thing, how to overcome that, how to cope up with that challenges, and how to come out of that challenges. It is our responsibility, and that's what lesson we all learn. We change our life almost 360-degree. I mean, we all stayed indoor for last 8 to 9 months now, and we learn to live life without being outdoor, without being more social, without without being not seeing the people, and not having a gathering for the entertainment, parties or wedding or whatever, and we all survived. And I think that's the lesson to be learned, that in the life there is always ups and down, and one should know how to or one should behave in tandem with the ups or down.
So talking about ups and downs, and you very nicely defined our need to stay indoors and everybody keeping to himself, herself, or to a limited circle. So no large gatherings for entertainment, etc. Which means more introspection. So I look at the both sides of the coin, Dr. Saab, in terms of people's response. And we also heard that cases of domestic violence increased because people were in the same proximity. So ultimately, it is how you are structured inside in terms of taking whatever adversities or challenging circumstances come. So, if I may request you to share your insight on what is it that can prepare people in 2021 or in future, if there are any adversities, that they respond in appropriate manner.
Well, I mean, since as you know, that two vaccine are in the market, they rolled out. Almost over 2-3 million people got the even first dose of the vaccine, including myself. So I think this vaccine, we know as a scientist, this vaccine, once if 75 to 80% people will take it, then the pandemic will end. But that doesn't mean that this kind of calamity again doesn't happen. Usually, pandemic doesn't happen that often. Pandemic happens, we suffer, we go through the all the pain and suffering. Then vaccine comes, so that's a kind of a mitigation. And once mitigation happens, we all are back to normal. And hopefully, we will be in normalcy by summer or fall next year.
Once again, I think everyone would like to see happen the way you said it. But what happened is a lot of uncertainties came over door at our doorsteps, and politically speaking, if you look at the way President Trump responded to COVID, also affected his chances of re-election. And talking about American economy, election in the light of COVID, what are your impressions?
Well, of course, the handling of the COVID is always a major factor in election. And win or lose happens because if you have handled properly or not handled properly, or even if you are handled properly, whether you perceive to be handling properly, that is more important. I mean, whatever the way, because everyone has their own way of handling any situation. So I think President Trump's handling of the COVID pandemic was perceived as not very good, and that's why probably he suffered from in the electoral voting. But again, also we should give him credit that within usually the we know as a scientist that vaccination takes almost minimum 2 to 5 years to develop, and here we develop vaccination within 6 to 7 to 8 months, and that's because of funding from the federal government to the pharmaceutical company. So I think with the bad, we should also give some credit to Trump administration, the way they thought, they dispersed the money in timely fashion and encourage the pharmaceutical company to develop the vaccine, which usually in medicine for any disease, any vaccine takes minimum 3 to 5 years to develop.
So there is another side related to COVID as well as even before that. President Trump has always been champion of good economy, and he managed to bring down the unemployment rate, and overall market was showing healthy signs under his presidentship till COVID hit us. So, looking at President Trump's performance and American economy and the stimulation packages which were introduced in the beginning, your analysis.
Well, I mean, government, I mean, of course, when COVID hit, whole lockdown happened, most of the businesses become stagnant. Obviously, the economy went down. But because of the government, that stimulus package in month of June, that really perk up the economy, that saved so many jobs of the people, and also gave some kind of better unemployment benefits. and all those things does help. And as you can see that in spite of the pandemic, obviously in April, May, stock market went down, but now stock market it's the highest in the history. So that shows that, or you can interpret that economy went down in the beginning, but because of the stimulus and because of the basic fundamental, fundamentally speaking, economy is very strong and sound. Only thing pandemic happens, people's activity gets restricted, and therefore transaction get restricted, and that's why we saw the dip in April, May, and then again now one can see that it's a kind of V-shaped recovery of the economy. Obviously, the main role is Reserve Bank or federal institute is playing by pouring at very low cost or with the free money. I think that's the reason why economy recovered very fast.
Now, economy to communication, communication through media. And President Trump very, very frequently talked about fake media. And I may share my impression. He adopted a confrontational attitude towards media in general. He was not going down, or he was not trying to play to them or be friendly with them, etc. Do you think that also adversely affected, or if he would have adopted the second approach, whereby you try to bring them to good books by at least being open to them? So, to sum it up, his style of communication, and in your view, what is the ideal way of handling communication through media by a leader?
Well, I mean, of course, ideal way is to make everybody inclusive and work together. But again, after saying that, it all depends upon how the both the parties are treating each other. If media is not fair or in reporting what administration is doing, and then probably administration has all right to confront, because the truth has to go out to the public, and therefore there is nothing like one is right or one other one is wrong. Only thing is all depends upon the what circumstances, or whether media is taking him out of context all the time, or media is reporting fairly. It depends on those kind of thing. And same thing, media also has to also act very responsible way. Should treat the office of, I mean, you may not like the person, but you have to treat the office of the presidency fair way, and not to report out of context all the time. I mean, sometimes yes, I mean that's how you make the news, but you cannot have everything out of context each time, every time, and change the narration of the subject. So I think it goes both ways. So there is nothing like one is right or wrong. It all depends upon the personality of the person, and once and his decision, or his or her decision to how to do the narration, whether to control the story by administration or control the story by media.
I think you are
Because
yeah, I think you are very objective in your analysis, because many people outright reject or kind of start putting black paint on his handling. But you have been very objective, and so with this sense of objectivity, if we talk about the recent reference of voters fraud, and there also media was not buying that right from the beginning of this reference of voters fraud. In fact, even before election, 3 months before that, he started saying that this postal ballot would lead to voters fraud, etc. And if I may also say that generally history is written by those who are victorious. So even if he was right or there was some grain of truth, but everybody is going to going to say that he was a sore loser now. Looks like it. Your take on this?
Well, I mean, we don't know. January 6th will tell us whether who is right or wrong. But if there is some irregularities in this election, in mailing ballots or whatever, then that also has to be exposed. Because if you do not do that, you're not talking about particular one election, but you are talking about the future democracy.
Absolutely.
And we should not let 50% of the population lose their trust in the process of the democracy. And that's why I think if they cannot show anything by January 6th, then by constitution, if they cannot show that there is something was wrong, then the whole chapter is closed, and he should resign. He should. I mean, I'm sure he will resign, and democracy will go on.
So now things look like moving away from President Trump because the usual stuff that happens, like president's pardoning of certain people, that has also happened.
Well, that is his every president's constitutional rights, and I'm here in USA for last 45 years. Every 4 years, when president pardons somebody, one or two or three or four people always question mark.
Right. Right.
Uh,
No, no, but
I
that
very
that
clearly.
happens. Yeah, but that generally happens at the end of the presidency, generally. Or
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it means that during this phase of the presidency, because
okay.
they have to pardon before inauguration, right?
Right. Right.
So I mean, whether a week before or week later doesn't make any difference. But always this pardon list is always have some controversy. I still clearly remember Bill Clinton pardoned one fellow. What's his name? Mark something. He really he was fugitive from the USA. He did a big scandal, and he was living in the Switzerland, and then he was pardoned. The same thing. There was one movie director who raped a teenager, 13 years old girl, and then he was punished for jail, and he fled the country, and he was pardoned. So I mean, there are there are always incidents out of say 50 number of pardons. If 5 or 10 may be controversial, and of course we have to make a voice for that. We have to make a noise for that. We should protest our objection, but constitutionally president has right to do that.
So moving from constitution to ethics to life in general, as we conclude today's session, any New Year resolutions, any specific advice that you may want to share with our viewers?
Well, I mean, the New Year resolution, I mean, in short term, everyone has to follow the CDC guideline. Please go ahead and get the vaccination whenever you get an opportunity to get one. Do not hesitate to get the vaccination. It's very safe. And third thing is, I'm glad that democracy is still working and kicking and really doing good. So we all should commit ourselves to democratic values, democratic countries, and be happy.
Absolutely. And so happy New Year, and you are concluding a specific message for 2021 for our viewers.
Well, dear friends, uh, on behalf of Parikh Worldwide Media, ITV Gold 24/7 oldest TV channel, as well as myself and my family, I would like to wish you all Happy New Year, happy and prosperous New Year, and healthy New Year, and be be nice to each other, be honest, be focused, and work hard. And that's my message, New Year message to all my friends here in USA as well as in India. Uh, Thank you. God bless America. God bless India. And God bless Indian American community. Thank you.